Session 2 of Indie Popcorn 2.0, live here at the Big House, a heritage home in Davao City. So earlier we had a panel, an interesting conversation. Diba, nagbuhat ng barko. Interesting conversation with the initial group of people talking about independent productions. This time we're going to have a set of exemplary, interesting women who will talk about their experiences as well as the politics of their writing. Ladies and gentlemen, three women writers from Southern Mindanao will share how they write about their personal experience, language, culture, and place. It is my pleasure to introduce the first speaker for this afternoon in the women panel. Leila Rispens-Noel is author of Beyond the Bensalem Skies, a memoir and co-author of the award-winning anthology Diaspora Journey, Stories of Philippine Migration in Hong Kong. She is a development worker, social entrepreneur, and founder of Wimler Foundation, Hong Kong, a registered charity organization, and Wimler Philippines, an NGO, a non-government organization. Now retired after living for 32 years in the Netherlands and 4 years in Hong Kong, Leila turned to creative writing to fulfill her childhood dream of becoming a writer. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Miss Leila Rispens-Noel.
Mayong hapon ka ninyong tanan, no? Actually, I am a reluctant resource person because maybe I am the oldest din sa atong grupo karon, but I am the youngest writer actually. Ever since I was a child, I dreamed of to become a writer, but my life had many detours and everything, and I did many things, traveled to many places, and I accept writing. So that's my greatest regret in my life. If I look at the writers at the moment, they're younger and younger and younger. Well, I feel so insecure because I am getting older and older and I am producing very little literary works. But anyway, I am so happy about the presentation of Eric and Elman because because I think they sum up the things nga atong istoryahan karon. All the important things what you have to do. Because as I said, I am quite new in literary world. My background is not creative writing. I work with a big with a large funding agency in the Netherlands, and I was trying to write project proposal, technical report, etc. And no fancy creative words. So it's very difficult for me actually to write a novel or to write a poem when I am trying to be a technical writer and I'm trying to be writing project proposal, because project proposals are no fantasy, no creative words, and no unnecessary words in project proposal, especially if you are evaluating it with facts. But creative writing, especially fiction, is different thing. However, I always love writing. Actually, ever since I was a child, I told you that I always wanted to be a writer. Pero it took a long time before I realized ang akong dream. So in the next slide, I will show you nagka-pandemic. And it happened that my husband and I decided to retire back to my hometown in Bansalan. And because I lived 35 years abroad sa Europe, and I did work there, but I did not write any, I wrote poems before, pero unpublished. I write essays, mga commentaries, but it's not from a mainstream magazine. It was not published there, but reports sa mga sa mga tawagan immigration and development sa World Bank Corporation, but I don't consider it literary work. Anyway, like 2021, napulaan ko because it is pandemic and I had nothing to do. So I told my colleagues in Hong Kong, so why don't we publish a book about the stories of the Filipino migrant workers in Hong Kong, the stories about Philippine migration. Because I noticed when I attend conferences, all the books are written by them. All the books are written by theory, mga theories. They interpret according to their academic understanding why a Filipino migrant worker, for example, decided to go to Hong Kong, to Middle East, to work. No? So, and they give them explanation. But I wanted a different thing. I wanted a book written from the perspective of the migrant workers themselves, from their own voice, from their own stories. So I suggested to my colleagues, why don't we publish a book and let the migrant workers themselves to write them according to their own voice. If we do the editing work, we will edit it to help it, to enhance it, but never change their story. Because we wanted to give face to the human migration in Hong Kong. So, dato nahitabo, there were four of us. One is in of 8 letters. Yes, was in Siberia. I was in Davidsalan, and two in Hong Kong. We never met, but we became the editorial team, and we started collecting a manuscript, and then this produced an anthology written by about 40 migrant workers, including ourselves. This was awarded by a Commission of Filipino Organization as the best anthology book last year. So we won an award for this. After published that, I said, I still have many things in my mind. You know, I am a martial law baby. When not even martial law baby, I grew up in martial law. So if you have that time, you remember the 1970s in Davao City, they were the active Tivolier. But even before that, before ko ni ang ibabaw, I was already active in Davao del Sur. And then I started thinking, I said, I know so many people in the late 1960s and before martial law, under martial law time. Where are they now? I don't know where are they. There were young people like me, aged 16 to 19, and we were in the bukid, and we were doing some teachings. And then we separated when martial law was declared. It became very intense, and then we just separated because some were afraid of our lives, some were detained, some were killed. And I was able to go to Netherlands, and I continued life there for 35 years. But then during that period, I never forget those people I worked with before, the places I visited. So I grew older. I started thinking, where are they and what are they doing now? So I started looking for them, looking for those people. And then I said, when I talk to my family, they don't know anymore the old Bansalan. No, the school, the market, the church, the road, everything in my memory about Bansalan. Nobody can talk about it anymore. So I said, I wanted to write about the old Bansalan. Just, wala may picture po ng old Bansalan. So the picture is in my mind. I know who lives in the street. I know where the park is. I know which building here. The next day until the market. I have that memory in my mind about if I write them down into a book, the one that you will read will have a clear picture of the old Bansalan, which is not captured by a photograph. So I started writing it. Why? Out of nostalgia. Nostalgia of my youth. Now, I played in the forest. I swim in the river. But those forests and river are gone actually now. You cannot find forests anymore in Poblacion Bansalan. The river is dried up. So I wrote about it. And half of them is the old Bansalan. And then the second part is about the martial law time. When I started looking about my friends, I found out that all of them are dead. No, my closest friend, I wanted to see again, died in 1998. I did not know he died. The other one died just 3 years before I looked for him. There were three people I was looking for. They are all dead. And I wanted to have a reunion with them. So, in memory, I said, I am left alone to tell our stories. And then if you talk about literature in Mindanao, in my generation, the one that we can best write about is what happened during martial law and before martial law, actually. But how can you write about them and then you will not be read them? You know, that is a big challenge at the moment. You write about what happened, your experience under the martial law period, and then you will not be read them. So in my circle of friends, we have a commitment to write what we believe, that uh, we experience. No matter what we tell us, it cannot change the history. Anyway, that's why I wrote it here, because I said, if somebody will tell this did not happen, this book will tell you it happened because I witnessed it, I live it. So that is my principle now. And then, I said reluctant because I just started writing, published. I've been writing contribution, but this is my real book, my first book that I published it, and they called me already also. All of you when it's okay. First book, second book. I'm not yet a season author. But my dream actually now is I want to write novel, but the novel should have a social relevance. Because if you read a novel around this time about love story, about romance, after reading it, nothing. It cannot change the concept. It doesn't change anything. So, para sa ako dili na mao ang genre akong gusto. Akong gusto, a love set in a situation, and it has education approach that you address social justice, you address poverty, you address this and that, so that you can change the situation. That kind of book I wanted to write. Pero nauna po ko, di yun na, way mo palit ni Ana, kay kuan man ka ng corny, or people will not believe it happened. But I think, as an aspiring author, I will stick to that. I will not write just because I just wanted to write for the sake of writing. I wanted to write because I have a mission to change social situation. A book that can influence the thinking of people, community, and we have to do something to improve our lives. So that is the kind of book I wanted to do now. What is the relevance of that? This I have picture in ibalik natin, no? Yeah, in 1979, you see my handscript. I started writing my journal because at that time, nobody wanted to listen my story. I cannot talk to my parents. I cannot talk to my friends because they are not interested to talk about politics. They do not interested. I resorted to writing my diary. So kanang diary, nagtapok na siya. And it became my references when I started writing a book. So diyan nakalimot na ko what happened in 1979. I just took out my diary and then review my diary. So what is my message actually in that? No? So makita niyo mo the old ones, like I started in 1969, and then the other ones when I started writing in Holland. But those are books, wala ko'y gipili nga notebook. Anything nga makuha na ko na book, I started writing. So our next slide, this is what I wanted to do because the two speakers earlier than me, the two young gentlemen, I was really impressed by what they have done and what they are doing. And in my heart, I wish I can do that. And I am talking with Professor Cyber na I wish we can replicate that in Davao del Sur. Kaya wala pa ka-IMS sa Davao del Sur. We are not advanced. So they give me inspiration while I'm still thinking about it, they are already doing about it. So that is really inspiring, and that is why I said, it's nice to be here also because actually I do not like to talk because I don't feel I have the authority or the enough experience to be able to share as an author. I'm not, I'm very looking kami na author ka. I am not yet that, I don't feel that way. I'm still working hard to become one. Anyway, sa ako lang pang perspective ng women sa Mindanao, ang gusto na ko may tabo, and I think these are a wish list which Socrates are already doing it, and the one in Davao is already doing it. You understand Mindanao through books from the perspective of Mindanao. I want to encourage that ang taga Mindanao yun ang magsulat sa kasaysayan sa Mindanao. Yeah, even if the people outside will learn about us, I think it will encourage if our voice are written by our own people ourselves. Although there are authors na aliens at sila sa culture, tradition, and history, bisan taga Mindanao siya. So when I say this is an authentic thinking of a Mindanaoan and write a book, an article, or essay, or magazine, or whatever, but from the perspective of Mindanaoan. Katong dimension na diverse, promote culture and tradition, languages. So, iba-iba ang mga languages. I work with Pagubot Tagabawa actually in Davao del Sur. I organize them, I help them promote their products, and I help them their capacity building program. But in the course of my interaction with them, I learned that some of them don't know anymore their own language. They don't talk Bagabagabawatacabawa anymore. So how can we help? How can we help them preserve their culture when the culture anymore is gone? No? Pipila na lang sa ila ang who can still talk in their own language, or they know their own history, or they know their own poetry. Most of them, they don't know it anymore. So how can we even encourage them to write their own poems when they do not know anymore their own language? So this is a big challenge of that. And it is not only Bagubutagabawa, but I think it's the same with different ethno-linguistic groups. Napabilaan ka man, Blaan, Tibuli, or whatever. There is a problem that your culture, their culture, tradition, and language are being challenged. Di na sila kay balumusulti sa ilahang language. Well, so what is the role of literature? What is the role of publishing world in these challenging times? No, when we talk about the culture, language, and tradition, when they are already getting to be extinct, no? So that ko kay tao kanang role to do that. To encourage publication of books from gender perspective. Actually, I added there from historical perspective sa Mindanao. Mindanao has different history than in Luzon. That should be written according to its own history and not according to what outsiders look at our own history. It should be the history based on the perspective of our own people, our own authors. So, kung sa ilang isulat sa mga Americans or the writers from Luzon, ang taga Mindanao nga mga writers would have their own interpretation. And I want to see that more on that. So next na slide, which is, that's why I do not like to make it a long speech. Naalang ko yung recommendations kinagmay. But in fact, I think, so while I am writing it, I am not aware what you are doing already. You are doing some of them. Ang una na ko recommendation is promote creative writing in schools, starting from elementary, by teaching them how to write their journals, diaries, or essays. Because journaling, if you start it at the early stage, matapok ng ilahang journal, it would become a source of reference when they write a memoir later on. So, and then, sa Netherlands ba, ang mga bata dito, tunan sila o kanang sulat o diary, your diary. So, but here in our country, I think it is not encouraged. When I was in high school, naamay may timbok sa una. Yeah, karihag title every year. My summer vacation. Every sa klase, ang title sa among essay, my summer vacation. What I did last summer vacation. Oo lang to, wala yung creative to. Other topics, no? Other topics. So, I think you teach children how to write even 1 page, 2 pages, journal or diary. O niya, ma-develop man ang ilang writing and imagination, creative imagination. Organize book clubs. I always wanted to become a member of a book club. Agreed time, we gather together and we discuss books. And then conduct regular book fairs, conduct creative writing workshop in and off-site, especially off-site. Panalit ka ng magkanda ko. Kaya usahay ng good writing, murag elite. No, only those who are intelligent, only those who are studying mass communications can write. But actually, we should not give that kind of impression na writing, creative writing is only for those who are studying mass communications or journalism. It should be everybody. We can encourage everybody to write. Bisag mag-driver ka, maglabandera, etc. If they can write about the day-to-day travail, that is really something. Kay record man na keeping back. May kanta sa una sa 1970, ang masa lamang ang tagbuhatod kasaysayan. No? That's the way how we sing it. The other people can only want to write their own story. So, the conduct creative writing workshop. Hey, Ma'am Cyber is doing that in Davao del Sur State College at the moment, and I hope we can have that in the whole region. They both na kung sa Krachin, they are doing it already. So maybe we can learn from them. Ma'am, you can contact him to how to do it. Workshop, gather young people in a weekend and start to write something. Poetry. Encourage publication of books in local languages, which is very difficult. Kay limited man ang kuan, limited ang market, and who will invest in this if it is not marketable, who will publish that book? So, mangita tao paagi nga labi na mga indigenous languages in CCA might be able to help. We have able to come up with we have a plan actually for the Bagubo Tagababa. One is to gather the poetry, legend, folklore, publish it in a popular version so that we can give it to the Bagubo Tagabawa children and the Bagubo Tagabawa themselves. Ang karagara, wala naman sila kay Bato. And we will also document the inabalwiwing. Dahil ko to ipa-video na mo ang inabalgikan sa pagputol from the time they cut the abaka up to the time they finish weaving so that they can preserve the culture. And of course, we need other forms of publication, again, video, storytelling, and then assist aspiring writers like mentoring, they need that. Katong mga bright seasoned writer, if you can spend one moment of your time to help a new one to develop a person to become a new writer, I think that would be a good a way of saying na you give it forward. No? Dili lang, you give your talent by yourself, but also you also share your talent with others. So, in that case, I think I will just want to emphasize that I support the presentation of the two earlier speakers, Eric and Nico. They are really good, and we hope we can replicate that. And on my side, personally, being an aspiring writer, and I don't know how much time I will have to write, to be continuously inspired by young people who are, I think, doing much better than my generation in terms of writing books and using social media. Sa among time, wapamitaw ang telephone, no? Wala yung mobile phone, only telex machine, mag-RCPI lang niya, wala, hindi may makatawag, and it was a difficult time. So, Pero katong ang memories na mo, in my generation, uh, I as an advocate, I need to wrap up my presentation. We are encouraging people of my generation to start writing their own either memoir or short story. No, like now, my next parang is to write a novel. So that is a kind of romance that happened in the time of martial law and how they met and how they were separated until EDSA, for example. That is very ambitious, but I hope I can write a kind of a novel pero based on true stories, pero fictionalize ang mga characters and setting and location. So that's all for me on my part. That's the only one I can share. And I hope that this is not the last event that we will be together and talk about the topic of today. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Leila. Ang dami nating natutunan. Very inspiring poetics at experiences ni Ma'am Leila. Okay. What struck me the most is her genre, historical fiction. No? In this age of infodemic and disinformation, literature is also a chronicle of history. Okay? So I do hope that a lot of people will get to read your work, ma'am. Okay? Never discount the wisdom of your generation. The younger generation especially look up to writers who've trailblazed or wrote before us and are still writing. Okay? Now let's have our second panel member for this session. If you have questions for Ma'am Leila, please do reserve them. May open forum tayo mamaya after our third resource speaker. Okay? Let me introduce to you our second speaker for this panel. She is a Blaan writer from Maranao, Davao del Sur. Matanao, Davao del Sur. Her stories are about the indigenous people, environment, and motherhood and children. She is also a mother and a wife. Her works appeared in world literature today, Words Without Borders, Youth Mindanao Banwa Journal, LIT Lit, and Shenandoah, I hope I pronounced this right. I'm sorry. Shenandoah Literary Magazine. We write best contemporary stories in translation from the Philippines. Annie 41 Lakbay, she was a fellow to Davao Writers Workshop 2018, IAS Lasal National Writers Workshop 2019, and Palihang Rogelio Sikat 12. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Ms. Elizabeth Joy Serrano-Quijano.
Hello. Thank you so much, sir, for that introduction. Hello to our live audience and online audience. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Of course, Aklat, Alamid, and NBDB. I'm going to talk now. Sorry, I don't have a PPT. I'll just share my experiences on being a woman writer, especially an IP woman writer from Matanao, Davao del Sur. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share my experiences and of course my advocacies on writing and how I and why I write. Okay, so okay, I'll start when I was a child. Short lang, kaya 30 pa man ko. So, dali. So, when I was a child, I was really a reader. So, I started being a reader. So, my mom was a teacher. So, yun. So, umuutang siya ng mga libro para mabasa namin. And back then, wala pa namang cellphone, hindi rin cable ang TV namin. So, parang wala din akong choice but to read. So, meron nga nagsabi na, you can't write if you do not read. So I'm also advocating for reading of the especially the youth and the younger generation. Halaga talaga ang pagbabasa kung gusto nating magsulat. So I started from reading and I wrote my first poem when I was 11 years old, which was published in our school paper sa Matanao Central Elementary School. So yun, namutang ng libro, napakarami ng libro sa bahay. So, pero hindi ko naman sinasabi, that's why I advocate for reading, but I also understand na hindi lahat may privilege, no? Hindi lahat nakakabili ng libro, hindi lahat may time magbasa kasi na kung gutom ka, wala ka namang time magbasa. So, what I'm advocating is that our story should be accessible. No, that's why I also support local books written by our yung mga kakilala lang natin. So it's very important that we buy their books, we support them, we even simple sharing sa Facebook can help them, no, promote and engage their in their work. So um yun na nga. So I was a reader and then I was also I was not in creative writing. Ang background ko is your mass communication. So I was very fortunate when I met Dr. Macario Chu, and then he gave me the opportunity to write a short story collection, of course, about the indigenous people in Matanao, Davao del Sur, the Blaan. Kasi yung Blaan sa Davao del Sur ay hindi siya masyadong naisusulat. Kasi ang Blaan ay mostly from South Cotabato, Sarangani, Jensen, Region 12, but not in region Davao del Sur. So, sa pagbabasa ko, I was curious, bakit walang IP writers? But why we cannot write about ourselves? Why is it na outsiders ang nagsusulat sa amin? And na pwede naman kami magsulat. We can write our own stories and our own narrative. So it really started with Davao Writers Workshop in 2018 that nagsulat ako nung Dili Pwede Mo Gawas, Can't Go Out. So yun yung libro na ipapublish ng Ateneo de Davao University, which will be launched this December 10. So sinulat ko lang siya because I was really inspired by the stories of the IP children in the mountains of Pulong Sabak, Matanao, Davao del Sur. So na-inspire ako na ang ganda ng mga kwento, bakit wala ito sa libro, bakit wala ito kahit sa online journals, bakit walang representation. So Mac asked for more stories. So I completed the collection in 2019 pa. So dahil may translation siya ni Sir John Bengan, so it took 3 years para ma-publish yung libro. And I'm very grateful to Davao Writers and of course to Sir Mac for the opportunity. And I am aware na hindi lahat ay nabibigyan ng opportunities na kagaya ko. So I am really advocating for more IP writers. That's why as a teacher now, I train my IP students. I conduct also workshops at school para ma-train yung mga IP sa Davao Occidental, especially mga taga-Colo, may Manobo, may Blaan, na they write about their stories, their places, yung mga oral narratives, napakahalaga that it should be written and published na mabasa ng wider audience. So yung theme that I write is about, of course, yung sinabi kanina, environment, yung sinabi rin ni Neil na yung social development is very important. That's why I write about the environment. Yung na-publish sa World Literature today, my story, The Pregnant Woman from Zamboanga. There was a scene there na nagkaroon ng diarrhea outbreak. Tapos, ang gi-blame ng mga tao ay mga engkanto, kaya nabuyagan. But actually, it's not the engkanto, pero dahil sa kapabayaan ng tao na naging marumi ang tubig. So, yung mga merong na-mention doon na sachet ng shampoo, yung mga basura natin, dinudumihan din yung ilog. So, that's why nagkaroon ng diarrhea outbreak. So, it's just a simple parang story, but if you really look into it, there is also an environmental advocacy that kasi ang indigenous people have this indigenous knowledge systems and practices, no, that really promote sustainable development. So the indigenous people are into kahit na wala pa yung concept ng sustainability, meron na kami noon. So So if we take care of the environment, we also take care of our indigenous people. So if we promote taking care of our environment, we also help the indigenous people to live um, kahit na nasa bundok sila or nasa, yung sinasabi natin nasa rural, pero pag sama-sama tayo na nagtutulungan, na alagaan yung kalikasan, we also help them live. Yeah, may sustainability para rin sa mga indigenous people. Kasi indigenous people, hindi sila sumisira sa kalikasan. They really protect it because they are part of nature. Para hindi, diba? So hindi sila ang center ng mundo, but they are part of nature. So yun yung concept mo. That's why we have the IKSPs. So I really see to it that in my stories, I include the taking care of our environment. It's very important, lalong-lalo na ngayon, no, merong SDG na climate action at sa nangyayari ngayon, it's very that everybody should our environment and our natural resources. Second, I write about women, of course, Barrio Bago. Napakaraming stories ng mga babae na dapat na isulat. Napakaraming stories ng mga ina, ng mga asawa na dapat mabasa at maisulat, no? Kasi meron ako narinig na parang over na daw ang women empowerment, parang we empower women too much, pero wala. There's no such thing as too much women empowerment. We are still struggling to be heard. We are still struggling na yung stories namin ay mabasa at maisulat. Dahil meron pang mga places dito sa Mindanao na kawawa talaga ang mga babae. Lalong-lalo na, no, meron pang mga child marriage, meron pang arranged marriage. No? So, it's very important that we sama-sama tayong makibaka kasama ang mga babae to promote our rights and empower these women. And how do we empower them? Of course, by providing them their basic rights. Makapag-aral, makakain, makainom na malinis na tubig, health care, all those basic rights are very important, lalong-lalo na sa mga indigenous women. Because the cultural communities that I visit, talaga masasabi kong basic needs are not yet provided by the government and by others na accountable sa pag-provide. So, I also advocate, yung sinabi ni Leila about children, although I try very hard to write about children's lit, but I can't. Pero I write about the children, especially yung dili pwede magawas from a perspective of a child. Yung gera, yung lahat ng mga mga vulnerabilities, no, ng IP na, mahirap pa, wala pa pinag-aralan. Ang dami-dami na nag-intersect na ang kanilang vulnerabilities. So, I'm interested in writing about children because, of course, I'm a mother and ang daming mga stories ng IP children, ng mga batang IP na ang ganda rin, ang ganda. Katulad ng most of my thoughts, parang nasabi ko na to, no? My teacher, my sister is a teacher in Colon Sabac. It's a very malayong lugar in Matanao. So parang dulo na siya, next is Sultan Kudarat na Colobio. So, what struck me most is yung nagkwento siya na naglalaro ng jackstone yung students niya. Tapos, meron lang mga bato and then they play jackstone and then then lumapit siya, anong nilalaro niyo? Then the student said, jackstone, ma'am. Pero, asa inyong bola? Saan yung bola niyo? So, they said, imaginary lang, ma'am. So, parang, no, it really broke my heart. Ha? Nangyayari pa ito dito mismo sa town natin, sa municipality natin, meron pa palang ganyan. So, that's why I took the initiative to to kahit man lang every Christmas makapagbigay sa kanila. So that's a personal initiative, no, from our personal pockets kami magkakapatid. So yun, makapagbigay man lang ng counting kaligayahan sa mga IPP children because they are really deprived of basic needs, lalo na sa transportation, walang maayos na daan. Pag umuulan, hindi passable ang roads. Pagkatapos, walang kuryente, hindi secured ang malinis na tubig. Ang health naman napakalayo. So parang papuntang, kung may maatake, parang namamatay na sa kalagitnaan ng road. So it's really heartbreaking. And if I don't write about these stories, who else will? So parang I challenge myself. It's like a personal burden. So parang i-ano ko na lang yung sarili ko. I-assign ko na parang ano nila, for mouthpiece, no? Parang, hindi naman, pero these stories, kasi kung may makakabasa, may makakaalam, may action, may kikilos. So, may mga policy na magagawa if alam nila na may kwento pa palang ganito. And it's happening. It's not fiction. It's happening. It's the reality of the indigenous people. Hindi lang siguro sa Davao del Sur, but even in other places that we are very, yun na nga, sinasabi ko rin na marginalized. But I believe na hindi naman kami na basta lang na marginalized. We were intentionally marginalized. And who are these people putting us in a margin? So that's why I really advocate for resistance, for action, and for parang it's time for us to claim our lands and voices back. So that's what my stories are all about. So even if it's parang simple stories siya kung babasahin, yun na nga sinabi ni Sir Max sa forward ng book na if you want to know the history of an area or a place, read its literature. So doon daw niya na nabasa na yung history ng Matanao through my stories, through my collection of short stories. Na sa pag-describe the reality of the people and how they live. And of course, yung my respect for the elderly because the indigenous people really listen to the elders, really listen to the older people, to the old people. Their wisdom, we rely on their wisdom. Okay, so the elderly, that's why I wrote the story Julia. It's a story, mahirap siya describe. It's a story na yung lola ko kasi based on reality. Yung lola ko kasi is a Marcos loyalist. So I tried to understand why she became a loyalist. So I wrote a story inspired by her na it's also relevant to yung misinformation. So, hindi naman natin maikakailan that of course, in Davao region, napakarami ng loyalists. And instead of hating them, I try to understand them. I try to understand where are they coming from. Bakit sila ganito ka-loyal? What happened? Kasi may nagsasabi that they were abused, may ganito nangyari, ganito kasama. May nagsasabi rin na, hindi, maganda ang buhay. Ano kami, masaya kami, we're staying. So yun. So when I did also my research, because I grew up with Marcos loyalists nila, so with those information, and then when I did my research nung nag-college na ako, bakit iba? So, merong mga reflection or mga pag-iisip, dagan kayo kung pangutanan ganun mga nilang ingon, ganun na version ngayon, But it's really up to us, ato ang judgment and wisdom kung saan ato ang tuhan. So, of course, my respect for my mga lola, mga elders, because yun na nga, the IPs rely on the wisdom of the elders. And my lola from the mother side is an Ibaloy, so from La Trinidad Benguet. And I see the comparison sa IP ng Luzon at saka sa IP ng Mindanao. Very yung sa mother side na hindi naman siguro lahat, but I can say na yung mga Ibaloy are very cold and ano sila, kanang calm na mga tao. And hindi sila ganun ka-warm. Unlike sa mga IP ng Mindanao na medyo aggressive, na tulad sa mga Blaan, na tribal, ano yan, warrior tribe, and parang ganun, warrior na people. Parang matatapa, masyadong vocal. But yung lola ko na Ibaloy, she's very distant, na cold. Siguro, may narinig kasi ako na they're cold kasi because of the klima or the weather. That they're not that warm na hindi sila may mag-hug or mag-kiss or showing emotions. Ganun. I don't know. It still needs verification. Pero meron lang na-explain na ganun siguro. But I wrote talaga stories about my grandmothers because they are amazing women, and also elderly IP women are very amazing, especially their wisdom. We can really rely on them and make their advice as our guide. No? And so so that's what I'm writing. I write about the IP people, the indigenous people, because it's time for us to write about ourselves. And since ngayon, limited to few literature lang talaga ang masasite ko na mayroong mga IP writers na from the community mismo, from the cultural community. So, for me, one way, may mga nagtatanong, paano kami makakatulong sa IP literature? Of course, may, yung sinabi ko kanina, simple sharing, engaging, not necessarily buying, but promoting, no, helping the writers, reading their works. Meron namang mga available online na to avoid also misrepresentation. Yun yung iniiwasan natin na may mga nagsusulat na outsiders and then may mga exploitation, may misrepresentation, and ang hirap na paganyan. So, in my own little ways, I try to really advocate IP literature and train the young IP writers. I invite also yung mga kakilala ko. Yung afford lang namin yung honorarium. So, yan. So, in our own little way, makakatulong tayo sa pag-boost ng IP literature. And hindi lang yung, ako minsan, even me as a writer, I do self-reflection na baka ginagamit ko ng IP, baka ano na to, personal na to. So, I always do that to, parang mag-meditate ako nga, hanggang saan lang ako dapat, or hanggang ano lang dapat yung isulat ko, para maiwasan ko rin yung parang minsan may guilt, baka na-exploit ko na, or baka yung stories ay walang permissions. So that's why I also engage with the National Commission and the Indigenous Peoples, yung NCIP. I also check naman the IPRA law, Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act. Kasi kailangan talaga ng maraming permits. Para even us, IP, if we are going to do research or story about the indigenous people, we need permit from the NCIP. So, ganun kahirap. And it's just good naman dahil may sumasala, may nag-guard or may guide para hindi nga ma-abuse ang mga IP. And patuloy pa rin tayo sa pagsulat, patuloy pa rin tayo sa paggawa ng sining para makatulong. Because really, those stories are basis for policies. Yun yung aim ko. That there will be policy, especially for social development. Baka may makabasa na lawmaker or may kapangyarihan, baka maawa siya. So yun yung target ko na somehow it will help change the realities of the indigenous people, especially women and children, no, na makatulong sa kanila through my art and through my stories. And I am so glad that this December 10, we will be launching a first short story collection written by Ablaan Woman, published by Ateneo de Davao University Press this December 10 at Ateneo University. So I hope that you will be there and just coordinate with the University Press Office, Sir Mac and Ma'am Jen Johnson for the reservation ng seats. So yes, platforms like this, I'm very grateful na may mga ganitong pagtitipon, may ganitong activities na may, kahit no, regardless of the numbers, isa man, dalawa, tatlo, basta may makaalam na, hey, we exist, these stories are real, and we need your help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Elizabeth. Okay, we have heard a lot of good points from her talk, especially your intersectionality, her experiences as an IP and also as a woman. Okay, personally, I'm also excited about the publication of her book because I've only read about her work in translation. So you can't get outside of that. So this is the first time that it will be published in its original language, okay? Mindanaoan Binisaya. Okay? Now, our third speaker was born and raised in Coronadal City, South Cotabato, but is now based in Davao. She wrote the children's book, Dako Nga Yahong Sang Batchoy, which won Best Children's Book in the 2021 Mindanao and ASEAN Literary Festival Book Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Jennie Arado, a member of the Davao Writers Guild.
Thank you, Sir Eric. Thank you, everyone. First of all, I want to thank all the organizers of this event. Maraming salamat, especially to our publisher, Aklat Alamid, for helping organize this event. So I will talk about the process and the journey of writing the book, Dako Nga Yahong Sang Batchoy, or in Tagalog, Ang Malaking Mangkok ng Batchoy. So yung title nun is Liwat-Liwat. Most of you are Bisaya siguro. So this is not liwat-liwat yung sendan or tagapagmana or something. This is liwat-liwat in Hiligaynon, which means paulit-ulit or repetition. Ayun. So, introduce ko muna yung lugar ko. As mentioned this, I'm from Coronadal City. This is nickname niya Marbel. So, some people don't know where Coronadal City is. They can place it on the map. So I just tell them, an hour away from General Santos City. And they normally shut up na kasi alam na nila yung General Santos City. Jensen is very popular because of Manny Pacquiao. And I have Manny Pacquiao saying for that kasi na-short yung explanation ko sa ating Marvel. So, Coronadal, as mentioned din mo, Joy, isa siya sa places na maraming laan. Yung trivia nila for Coronadal, and I remember that until now. So why is this fact about Coronadal very important? Because Coronadal is parang nating passion of different tribe, different race. Ako personally, I'm not Ilonggo. I only speak Hiligaynon because of the place, because I'm from Coronadal City. But by lineage, my maternal the paternal side or my maternal grandparents came from Laguna and Batangas. So talagang Tagalog, Southern Tagalog talaga. After the World War II, nung nagka-dalawang anak na yata sila, they moved here to South Cotabato kasi yun yung gawain nung time after World War II. People from Luzon and Visayas moved to Mindanao to a better life, mas peaceful, ganyan. So, ganun yung nangyari. And then my father also is from Leyte, Bisaya siya. So, Bisaya, Tagalog kami sa bahay and I only learn about speaking Hiligay noon because of my classmates, because of my friends, ganyan. And then, yung Coronadal City din, that's why mga Ilonggo ang mga tao dyan sa South Cotabato and nearby areas because also after World War II, yun nga, Luzon, Visayas people moved to Mindanao for the same reason that my grandparents moved to Mindanao. So, ang mga places dyan, New Iloilo, New Lambunao, and when you go to Bacolod and Iloilo, yun yung mga lugar, di ba? May Iloilo nga at may Lambunao. So, marami dyan. May mga Ilocano din dyan, etc. So, talagang marami. So, next slide po, sir. So, I grew up in a household na puro libro na nagbabasa talaga kami. So, itong mga libro, these are the actual books that I read growing up. So, merong encyclopedia ng Disney. This is actual encyclopedia siya, pero Disney yung nag-produce. So, may mga Daffy Duck and Mickey Mouse na narration. Ayun, so ang cute niya. And then, Philway's Almanac, ito yung first book ko into Philippine literature din. Kasi may mga folklore, may mga riddles dyan. But it was narrated in a fun way. And then, itong Freddy the Frog, the very favorite ko siya. Pero in a way, aside sa Philway's Almanac, wala na akong any Philippine literature of any kind na nababasa, which back then, I didn't mind it na parang hindi siya big deal for me. Basta may mabasa ako, gano'n. Nabasa ko nga yung yellow pages ng ano namin sa bahay, diba? So, ayun, growing up, I had a certain fund for books, and then eventually, next slide po, sir, eventually, I realized na, sige, parang gusto ko mag-English for college or BA English, creative writing. So, yun yung tinake ko for college. In one of our subjects there, we had the subject writing for children or children's literature, and one of our projects is magsulat ng children's poem for little kids, I think 7, 8, 9 years old. So I wrote this, but don't judge kasi 10 years ago pa yan siya. So this is Super Me at the Supermarket. So sinulat ko po yung own experience ko that I usually get lost in the supermarket. So ito yung pinakauna kong salang or pinakauna kong experience into writing children's literature. Project namin siya sa school. So, ayun siya. This was illustrated by a classmate, by a friend. Ayan, next slides here. Ayan, so about the book naman, itong pinroduce ng Aklat Alamid is, I only learned through MJ na naglo-launch na kami that ito pala yung first Mindanao Hiligay nun na book or children's book na pinroduce na tawag na to, for sale or for production talaga nationwide. So that I'm very honored, no? So, kasi nga, wala masyadong gumagawa niyan. Hiligay noon or yung mga Ilonggos sa South Cotabato, they use the language as parang conversational, but they don't use that sa academe, sa piece of literature. So, magandang, pala siya, parang, tawag nito, good timing pala siya na meron na ngayon na children's book pero in Mindanao Hiligay mon because nobody has done that. So ito yung premise niya po. Hindi magana magkaon sila yun gani gindala siya sang iya nanay kag tatay sa Batsoyan kag gintudloan sang Batsoy magic. In Tagalog, hindi magana kumain sila yun kung kaya't dinala siya ng nanay at tatay niya sa Batsoyan and tinuruan ng Batsoy magic. Ayun. So, next slide po. Ayan. So, how did I start writing the book? Ito yung gusto ko i-share kasi para sa akin, it's personal, it's deeply personal, pero as I was invited to talk about it and to share about the book, yung mga na sana, parang mga events, parang ganito din, na-realize ko, yung pagiging personal niya na experience ko, somehow, may din naman pala, may relevance din pala, kahit personal experience ko siya. So I started writing the story thinking ano yung biggest dilemma ko ba as a kid. Kasi parang, if I remember correctly, the book was supposed to be read by children, parang 7 to 9 years old, if I'm not mistaken. So, binalik ko yung mind ko sa time that I was 7 to 9 years old and thought, ano yung pinakamalaking kong problema that time? And actually, pinakamalaking problema ko that time is appetite problem. Ang hirap ko makaubos ng pagkain. Sometimes, my mother would nag me kasi late na ako always. Almost every day late ako sa school because yung breakfast ko hindi ko maubos kaagad. Yun yung pinaka-problem ko before. Tapos ang laking problem niya for me as a little kid. So, but my parents don't want to send me to school na hindi nakapag-breakfast. So, yun yung problem ko. Paano ba ako magbilis kain? Ganyan. So, yun, I wrote about the story of Leon, who has appetite problems, who also was very, very skinny. Pero sa batchoy lang siya nagkaroon ng understanding sa food and naubos niya, parang gano'n. So what particular personal memories did I want included in the story, and will my childhood self be happy? So nung sinulat ko siya, I always kept in mind about my childhood self, and kung yung version ba ng story ko sinulat ko, will 7 to 9-year-old Jennie be happy about it? Parang ganun yung iniisip ko. When I was writing it, hindi pa ako nag-isip ng mga advocacy, hindi pa ako nag-isip ng mga kung ano-ano na, maaano nito ang Mindanao literature, Mindanao Hiligay nun. No, I was thinking about that 7 to 9-year-old Jennie Arado. How will she feel when I tell everyone about her story na mahirap siya pakainin, and one day, dinala siya sa isang batchoy place. By the way, shout out sa Popoy's Batchoy in Marbel. Yun talaga yung childhood ko. Anyway, ayun. So, ito po yung nangyari, no, na very thankful po ako sa Aklat Alamid kasi quick kwento lang po, yung dako ngayong isang batchoy is a product of competition organized by Manug Isa. It is, here's that slide po, sorry po. Organized by Manug Isa. It is an organization ng mga writers in South Cotabato and Aklat Alamid. So, sabi nila, yung sinabi na rin mechanics, who can join, and then sabi nila yung champion or yung mananalo ang prize niya is ma-illustrate yung book. So sabi ko, grabing win yun, parang that's a big opportunity. So what I did when I was writing the story, when I was revising it, before I submitted it, ang nasa mind ko na talaga how it will look like illustrated. I didn't not mind the text alone, but how it will be illustrated. Hindi ako visual artist, I can't draw for my life. Pero when I was writing it, I was very conscious of how the potential illustrator will draw it. So ayan po, thankfully naman po nanalo naman siya last 2018, and marami akong na-realize how helpful these writing contests are in the local level. So number one, I realized that it helps the writer revisit the local language and actually use it for a literary piece. Kasi as mentioned na, not a lot of people in South Cotabato do that. No, so they're very comfortable of the language that they speak, that they sometimes forget na hala importante pala siya, hala hindi pala lahat ng tao nakakasalita nito. Kasi it's very natural. It's very natural for people in South Cotabato to speak Hiligaynon. That they forget that this is a history, this is part of history. For one, yung Hiligaynon in South Cotabato is obviously different from Hiligaynon in Bacolod and Iloilo. And one factor of that is, of course, geography. Yung katabi niya is General Santos City and other places that speak mga Maguindanao areas or Maranao areas na mga locations. So yung Bisaya ng Jensen, iba din sa Bisaya in Cebu, obviously. So yung neighboring areas niya, speaking different languages, na halo-halo na siya bale doon sa Hiligaynon that the people in South Cotabato speak. So iba-iba na yon. So I feel it's important to share because yung variety ng yung variety ng languages in the Philippines is so rich that you can't just say, merong Ilocano dito, merong Bisaya dito, may Hiligaynon dito. But under Hiligaynon, for example, is umbrella of different languages, no? Depende dyan sa lugar that where they speak. So yun, may awarding kami, meron kaming nangyari nga na nung sa Soxzin Fest din po ito. And then it encourages more children to read, and most especially in the local language. Kasi ako, as I shared earlier, no, wala akong binabasa na on my, written in my local language. Yung binasa ko nga yung Disney's na encyclopedia, yung Freddy the Frog, etc. So I would have loved, that little kid would have loved to read more of, for example, yung mga pinaproduce ng Aklat Alamid. Kasi kahit ako ngayon na in my late 20s na ako, I still get very excited pag nakikita ko yung mga ganyan na children's book. They're very colorful, they're very beautifully illustrated, and yet they're written in a different language. So parang na-excite ako kahit medyo matanda na late 20s na, hindi na ako yung talagang target market ng books. But I still want to buy those. Kasi parang wala yan nung time ko, parang gano'n. So I'm so happy to see yung mga gano'n na and mga publications ngayon that advocate really for that. Next slide po, sir. Ayan, so the book has taught me a lot of things. As the author, it has taught me a lot of things. Number one, of course, you don't need a moral lesson. Ito yung pinaka tawag nito, misconception when writing a children's story siguro. Ano pang magiging moral lesson nito? At the end of Leon's story, anong natutunan ni Leon? Which I think, personally, hindi siya dapat ganon. Kasi it will misdirect your story to be moralistic in a sense. So what I think should happen is just tell Leon's story and bahala na kung ano yung makukuhang moral lesson ng reader. So reader 1 may have a different moral lesson and reader 2 may have a different moral lesson. So subjective naman siya. But I don't frown upon naman yung mga usual natin na the hare and the turtle, the mga story, or tortoise ba yun siya. So yun, talagang, it was really created to have a moral lesson and it existed that way. But it would be good if tayo mga young writers create stories or stories for children that does not dictate what they can learn from it, diba? Mas maganda siguro ganon. And then tell a story that your younger self would love to read and be happy about. Kasi I feel like younger Jennie, 7 to 9-year-old Jennie, is already happy with what happened to the book and to her story. Kasi story niya yung story nila yun. And I think she's happy naman. And then the symbolism will surface naturally. Ayan, so hindi natin isipin, ano ba yung symbol nung Batchoy, ano ba yung symbol ni Leon, etc., etc. So when I told the story, it's just a story that I want to share to everyone. I did not even think na parang happy coincidence siya na it's a Hiligaynon book for Ilonggo-speaking individuals. And then may batchoy. Di ba pag sinabing batchoy, that's really pagkain talaga yun ng mga Ilonggo, di ba? Lapas, batchoy, etc. It just happened. Hindi ko siya sinadya. And as I always mention again and again, that this is semi-autobiographical. When I was a kid, dinala din ako ng tatay ko sa batchoyan after school, etc. Tinuruan niya din ako ng batchoy magic, although he didn't call it that way. And that's in Popoy's batchoy pa rin po. So, yan po. Hindi siya talaga intentional. Ayun. And then repetition in Hiligaynon. Paano ba yung minention ko kanina na liwat-liwat? Very thankful po ako na Aklat Alamid, ang pinili nila na illustrator, which is si Miss Raya Dizon Maniago, is someone from General Santos City. So she speaks Bisaya, of course, in Gensan, but she has a personal context of the Hiligaynon in Marbel. So may ganun siya, parang relate niya. So when she read the text, yung illustration niya, not necessarily naman na in-instruct sa kanya or something, pero nakita niya kasi kung ano yung nagka-idea siya sa text alone. So yung ginawa niya, if may copy po kayo ng book, makita niyo sa illustration niya, sinulat niya yung mga repetitions. So for example, humok-humok, niwang-niwang, damo-damo, liwat-liwat, etc. Kasi po, hindi niyo natatanong, sa Hiligay noon po, when you repeat an adjective, nagiging superlative form siya. So sinulat ko po dyan, it implies the superlative form. So when we say na guwapa siya, we don't just say guwapa siya. If we want to say or to underscore her beauty, sabihin mo gwapa-gwapa, gid siya ya. So may gid pa gid. So yun, may mga ganong instances na pag in Bisaya, in Filipino, it's different. So kaya magical yung discovery or accidental lang siguro na pagkakita ni Miss Raya nung repetition ko doon sa text. Kasi she made it or she anchored her illustration to that. When you see the pages, per page, may repetition po siyang nilagay doon within the illustration. So it's important kasi yung mga non-Hiligaynon speaking, yun yung unang nilang napapansin sa mga Ilonggo friends nila na ano kinausap-usap man ninyo ang words or why do you keep on repeating the word? Kasi it's an identity of the language. When you repeat it, especially the adjective, you are saying na sobra-sobra yung insert adjective. So when you say humok-humok, it's very tender, it's very soft, ganyan siya. So damo-damo, very multiple in numbers, ganun siya. But that language technique does not work naman in any other languages kasi. So yun, very unique siya sa Hiligaynon, and I feel like it's also the case for Bacolod and Iloilo, if I'm not mistaken. So pag inulit mo siya, ayan. So paulit-ulit natin ako. Next slide po. Ayan. Which I just recently connected sa repetition din ng lifestyle ng children. Kasi recently ko lang na-realize how important pala yung repetition to children. Kasi when I did a quick reading, when you keep on repeating something or a schedule sa isang bata, sa kanila, sa mind nila, ma-retain. So magkakaroon sila ng pattern, magkakaroon sila ng schedule. Di ba pag magpapati-train tayo, may mga pamangkin po kayo, may mga anak kayo, you keep on repeating to them na when they feel funny or when they feel fuzzy, punta sila dito. May ganong pattern eh. So it's very important also for children. So sabi ko, oo nga pala na may ganun palang technique din when you do that to children. So the same way na ganun yung nangyari sa children's story nga namin ni Miss Raya. Next slide. Ayan. So finally, to end my talk, I just want to encourage everyone to also find hometown stories. Like what Miss Leila mentioned kanina, na if you're not going to tell the story of your hometown, who else will? Kasi no one will speak or no one will talk about your hometown talaga. It's just you. Kasi, for example, yung kapitbahay mo, kunwari writer yung kapitbahay mo, iba kasi yung perspective niya of your hometown, iba din yung perspective mo. So no one else will write how you remembered that place, how you remember the roads, how you remembered everything. So for me, it's really, really important to write about your hometown, to write about the places that you remember and how you remembered them, because sooner or later, we will forget them. No matter how sabihin natin, hindi ako makakalimutin. But somewhere down the line, you will forget. Minsan nga, pag nag-journal ako, nabalikan ko yung mga journal ko 3 to 5 years ago. I don't remember these things happening, but fortunately, I wrote them down and I realized na importante pala na sinusulat ko siya kasi hindi ko na talaga natandaan na, okay, this is how it happened. Maybe you remember that this happened, but how it happened, masyado na siyang vague or masyado na siyang hirap alalahanin. So, yun, in the age of social media, when we have very limited attention span, I still advocate for writing it down. And especially if you writing hometown stories for me is not just about #support local or mas mabenta kasi pag you write about your hometown. Okay, that's one thing to look at. Pero iba din pagka it's coming from you, it's more authentic, it's more genuine, and at the end of the day, you will realize that you have done something right somehow. Balik sa dako ngayong sang batchoy, I did it for my inner child. I did it para masaya naman si 7 to 9-year-old Jennie. But after a year, after 2 years of talking about the book, I realized its relevance. I'm writing about, I wrote in Mindanao Hiligaymon, which is somehow a rare thing pala. I did not realize it. So I just wrote, and nangyari na lang na, hey, you did something cool. Did you know that you did something cool? Parang ganun siya. So, yun. Maraming salamat po ulit for inviting me. And thank you. Thank you for listening.
Duro-duro gid nga salamat kay damo-damo gid kaming maraming kaming natutunan sa sharing ni Miss Jennie, especially the production of her children's book, which I think is available at the back if you want to check it out. Yeah, I also witnessed the production of this book and its significance in the literary scene in Saxarjan, yeah, in Mindanao in general. Okay, may I invite our panel of women writers who shared their stories and their poetics earlier here in front, and we could have a short open forum. There are questions, I think, from online also. Okay, and we can start with the live audience. Okay, mauna muna tayo sa live audience. Sino gustong magtanong? Let's open the floor to people here in the live audience, and then let's go to online questions. Yes, sir.
Okay, so good evening po. Actually, I am most interested po in what exactly are the best methods for training aspiring writers, and most especially in the context for children and also for women in, let's say, in OSY, those who identify as OSYs. Because siguro napapansin ko kasi sa communities na when we want people to write about their experiences, I think it is most best to get them from the ground level perspective. So dito na rin po yung katulad sa na-mention ni kanina po na there are experiences na best delivered once written. Then yun po, what are the KPIs or key performance indicators po for trainings na magiging effective din po, na parang i-observe kung nagiging effective din po ba yung workshops and trainings. Always wise po yung out-of-school youths. Ako po pala si Sebastian Perry Ferreira, a member of Sigaw General and a contributor for Southern Festival.
Okay, that's the question of Sir Sebastian. Anyone from our panel who would like to address that question?
Yes, thank you for that question. For me, katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, it really starts with reading. So, to engage the young writers in reading. You cannot write anything without reading. So, yun, kailangan, and paano sila makakapagbasa kung gutom? Of course, yun ang sinasabi ko, paulit-ulit, yung basic rights. Kailangan may makain, kailangan may tahanan, kailangan may damit, may basic needs na provided para makapagbasa sila. So, let us always remember that reading is a privilege. No? So, kung meron tayong time na magbasa, we are privileged. Kung meron tayong libro na nababasa, we are privileged. So, let's share these privileges to others na wala. So, how do we help them? Of course, we push for accountability of our leaders na ibigay sa kanila yung basic needs nila and yung rights nila para makapagbasa sila and then makapagsulat sila. And we who have little privileges should step up what we can do. No, kung meron tayong maitulong na maliit na yan o malaki, nakakatulong na yan para masuportahan yung mga aspiring young aspiring Filipino writers. And aside sa reading, di ba nasa, I don't know if it's in the law, pero dapat mayroong mga public libraries. Pero iyan, walang public libraries, especially sa rural areas. So how do we, paano natin ma-expect na may magsusulat o magbabasa na wala namang venue, walang access? So let's push for that, I guess. First, before natin sabihin, tamad lang talaga kayo magbasa. Pero it's not siguro katamaran, pero wala sila talagang access. No, lalo na yung mga nasa bundok, yung mga IP. So, dapat ma-provide sa kanila. And even textbooks in the government schools ay hindi na ipoprovide ngayon. So, imagine, even textbooks hindi available. So, we rely only in poorly printed modules. So, sana ma-address yan bago natin, parang basic muna, bago tayo mag-level up na mag-conduct tayo ng mga training, mag-conduct ng workshop. Kasi baliwala ang workshop kung hindi rin naman sila magagamit. Pagdating sa bahay nila, wala silang makain. Pagdating sa bahay nila, wala rin naman silang libro or walang time magsulat dahil kailangan magtrabaho. So, that's my point lang naman. Now, kung meron tayong boses, meron tayong venue, na i-push talaga natin yung rights, basic rights, and accountability talaga ng mga leaders that they should provide this so that we can level up our literature, we can level up our literacy rates sa Pilipinas.
Thank you, Ma'am Elizabeth. Ayan, lakasan pa daw natin ang access. Okay. May I also point out that may initiative din natang NPDB regarding book nooks. So if you'd like to initiate that in your regions, maybe you can contact and ask for funding para mapalawak din natin yung access in terms of accessibility ng mga libro and also nourish the intellectual abilities of our IT people. Okay, we have an online question, I think directed to Ma'am Leila. Okay, the question is about the Filipino diaspora. Ma'am, meron ka daw bang nakitang recurring themes in the domestic helpers in Hong Kong? Yes, the question.
I asked someone to write the questions because I have problem with my hearing. If you ask question to me right now, I cannot understand it. We have a question. Just jump some lines and I will try to answer it. But there is an interesting question here. What are the common themes in Filipino diaspora stories of domestic workers in Hong Kong? Remember that, there are 200,000 migrant workers in Hong Kong. 95% are domestic helpers, meaning they work and they are living. But you will be surprised that it is not anymore a common notion na yung mahihirap ay pupunta to work to look for a job abroad. Not anymore. There are teachers, professionals doing work, domestic work in Hong Kong. So the stories are varied actually. In my study, in fact, I conducted a survey 4 or 5 years ago on the use of the remittances. Most of the stories sa kanila is they leave the Philippines so that they can earn money to send their siblings or children to school, to build a house, to start a business, to be able to depende sa kanilang motivation to work. But in Hong Kong, kailangan live-in sila. That means they have to live in the house of their employers. So 24 hours per day, except on their free day, either Saturday or Sunday, nasa bahay ng kanilang amo. Na hindi sila free to move around, and they do a lot of work. So, depende sa stories that you like, I can give you. There are stories that successful naman migration. They were able to earn money and they were able to send the children to school. In fact, mga honor students for yung kanilang mga anak. Tinatanong ko nga sila, what if you did not go to Hong Kong? Ma'am Lalay, sabi nila, hindi kami makapag-aral ng hindi ka graduate. So anong anong payoff mo dyan? Kaya di ko sila makikita mo for a long time, 3 years, hindi ko mabibisita yung mga bata. But the technology plays a lot of, ano na ngayon, they can face off, they can talk, unlike noon na wala pang Facebook, wala pang Messenger, wala. But this social media can help them a lot. But I tell you also another sad stories. Ay, tinanong ako doon, sabi ko, ilang taon ka na sa Hong Kong? Sabi niya, 35 years na siya. So, why did you come to Hong Kong? Siya, para mapag-aral ko ang mga anak ko, ma'am. Di 33 years ka na, di. Tapos na yun sila pag-aaral. Give them 10, 12 years. Siya, ma'am, ako na nagpapaaral ng apo ko, ma'am. No, they cannot go home. And instead of sa pa-eskwela ng mga bata niya, naka-graduate na, ngayon ang apo na niya pinapag-aral. Another story. I remember it because I conducted interview. Sa anong purpose mo to come to Hong Kong? To build a house, Ma'am Lalay. Okay, so were you able to build a house? Yes, ma'am, naka-build ako na lang. Umuwi ka na. And say your migration goal is already achieved. Sa iba naman nang nagtira sa bahay, Ma'am Lalay, may iba nang asawang husband. So, those things can be comical, ano? When you hear about it, ako, parang sinabi ko, nagpaloko ka pala. You can say shit, you can say bullshit, you can say you're stupid, etc. But if you think about it, it's happening. It's happening. You know, you work very hard to build a house, pero hindi na siya makauwi kasi ibang nakachika. Why don't you let the woman, get out. Hindi naman pwede mag-trabaho na lang ko dahil maghanap naman. So, the story of our migrant workers, very talaga. But in Hong Kong, no matter how long you will work there, 30, 40 years, uwi ka at the end of the last energy, they have to go back. They have no choice but go back because there is no way in Hong Kong to integrate in the society, to become permanent residents. The domestic workers are not included in the right of abode. That means, kahit anong katagal ka magtrabaho sa Hong Kong, hindi ka pwedeng magiging permanent resident. Unless makapangasawa ka ng local. That is the only way to be able to become a permanent resident of Hong Kong. Yeah. So there are a lot of things, but the thing is, our migrant workers are very daring. They suffer all the sacrifices and problems. When they receive their money, salary, they send most of that money home to be, and then they live on a very small amount of money for themselves. They do not save for their own future. So tinuruan namin sila sa financial literacy na first pay yourself before you send money to your family. In that way, you have something for your future. But that is not yet the case sa mga migrant workers. I read a book that stories, there are about 40 stories there, and have different reasons why they come and what become of them. Some are successful, some are less successful, but you can read all of them, the resilience of the Filipino workers, that despite of difficulties, they will endure it for the sake of their family. Yung altruism, yung love of family, sometimes a kind of very bad trait for Filipinos. Yun lang. But what will happen to them if they did not leave their home? That is, I always ask myself. So, yun lang. And some will go home because they have cancer, they are sick, and they only go home when they are dying or they had already died. So, yun. If you want the stories, get the stories of migrant workers and migrant workers because it's really different than those who work in Japan or like that. But in Middle East, there are also difficulties in the Middle East. And we are collecting this. Aside from the diaspora journey in Hong Kong, we are now planning to publish diaspora journey in the Netherlands context. It might publish this year also.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Leila. Okay. My introduction to this is yung documentary nga na Sunday Beauty Queen, if you've seen that, di ba? May kababayan ako dun na, naging part of it. So, Hong Kong Stories, that's one example of the advantages of curation. Kasi without editors like Ma'am Leila who collect the stories of people, they get lost. Okay? In connection to Ma'am Leila's answer, I think the next question is for Ma'am Jennie. Okay, can you say that publishing nowadays is kinder to women in contemporary times at may pahabol pa? But who are the women writers daw that you are reading?
Okay. Before I answer, Sir Eric, no yung question, I would just like to add doon sa question po ni Sir Sebastian Bantama. Kasi he asked about the KPI of workshops, and I feel like we need to address that somehow because workshops are, in a way, hindi kasi siya parang, let's say, hindi siya objective in nature yung goals niya. So we can't really say there's a KPI to it versus yung mga, for example, mga marketing initiatives na may KPI talaga kung ilan talaga yung sales ganyan. In workshops, it's different. One workshop fellow may have a different experience from a next workshop fellow. So iba yung magiging goal nun, ay magiging outcome nun. Maybe the best or the ideal outcome of a writer's workshop is for some of these batches. Sa batch na to, for example, merong a few of them that will continue writing, that will continue teaching literature, or continue advocating, at least advocating for literature. But you can't really target na all of these fellows will eventually be writers. So I've never co-organized naman a workshop, but I've been a panel I've been a fellow, sorry. I've been a fellow in a few I've been a fellow in a few workshops naman. So I know na hindi madali magkaroon ng goal na gano'n na ano bang future ng mga fellows na ito. So the best that you can get is for these fellows to be inspired and to continue writing. That's it. And for the next question, sir, no, yung how is it difficult for women? Tama ba? How is it kinder?
Is the publishing industry now kinder to women writers? Like before, you have to hide behind a pseudonym that is may sounding, I don't know.
I feel like it's ano ba? Right now, hindi kasi I really can't speak for all the women writers because my situation is different from them. Especially, for example, yung mga talagang IP writers or those who really went through a lot of these social challenges. So, but maybe yung mga na ano ko na before that I've read in the past and have compared, no, it's easier or kinder in a sense that people have a certain understanding of feminism and what feminism really means and how it is important to the society and not just to the women in general. So when the society understands feminism and looks at it in a more compassionate sense, na hindi lang kasi trending yung feminism ngayon, mas kinder siya to women, not just to writers, but also to mothers and to domestic helpers, to everyone na babae. And I feel like it's also important to not only say kinder siya to women writers because that will be very inclusive. So what we want to see is a society kinder to all kinds of women. Ayun. So, ayun lang siya. So, yung writer siguro na babae na binabasa ko, Filipino writer is Ma'am Jennie. Christina Pantoja Hidalgo. I've met her once sa isang workshop and she's very kind. And since before ako nag-children's story, I've tried din creative nonfiction and she's one of my inspirations because of how straightforward her essays are, but at the same time, they have a certain depth to them. Ayun po.
Okay, thank you very much. Because we are running out of time, I'd have to end our Q&A now. May isa pa sana question dito, but sorry, go.
Can I also add though na yung sa KPIs ng, I remember, sa workshop, it's also very, very important to make every workshop a safe space.
Ooh, okay.
To all who are conducting, organizing workshops, let us make workshops as a safe space to everyone and of course inclusive. So na hindi sana yun, naiwasan yung mga predatory, mga predators, yung mga ganun na issues. No, kasi napakaganda ng aims ng mga workshops, ng goals, ng objectives, but nasisira because of those issues. So it's just so sad. So we also advocate, as women writers, we also advocate for safe space in workshops.
Right, ma'am. Okay, let's amplify that call for safer spaces in literary scenes. Okay, let's not oppress and abuse people. Okay, one online question you've already addressed, like how do we ensure that the next generation keeps on writing? Yun pa rin yun, equal opportunities and increased access. Ayan. Thank you very much on behalf of all the people here. Let's thank our women writers, this interesting panel that share their experiences as women, as marginalized people, also in the intersections of becoming an IT, a mother, a domestic helper, someone in the margins. Okay, the certificate of appreciation is first given to, then I ask, sana si MJ, who will award. One na lang from Aklat and Sir Carlos, can I ask you again to help us award these certificates to our panel members?
Eric,
Yes po.
may I say?
Sige po, sure po.
I just like to have this parting ideas to you na how do we encourage our young people to really take reading books seriously and instead of just playing with their computer, telephone, whatever. How do we promote book reading from people very young up to college? Kasi correct me if I'm wrong, I am not underestimating the Filipinos, but I think we are not book reading people in the Philippines. We don't read a lot of books. That's why our imagination sometimes, those who love reading is very few. During my time in high school, in fact, only very few I can count up on reading books. But at that time, meron kaming anong tawag nun sa school? Meron pa ba ngayon? They were required to read book and make the summary. Is it required to go still in the school? Noong time namin, we are required to read so many number of books and then we have to summarize it in our English subject. And so that's why we like reading books at that time. So we have to promote reading books and at the same time teach our children from very young to really start writing so that they will remember what they hindi lang few.
Nandyan po ba?
Okay, thank you very much for adding to the conversation, Ma'am Leila. How I wish nga na mag-continue pa rin yung mga ganong klaseng initiatives to boost people's love for literature and writing. Okay? What would have happened if Ma'am Leila did not collect her thoughts before in diary form, di ba? Do we still keep join us? Maybe our generation today, we write in the internet and that's subject to being erased. Okay, pag nawawala yung mga accounts. Okay. Sir Carlos, I'm going to give now certificates to our speakers, assisted by Sir Carlos and MJ. The first one, the certificate of recognition is given to Ma'am Leila Rispens-Noel, okay, for being a resource speaker in the Davao leg of IndyPodcon 2.0. Picture po with our publishers and then picture, ma'am. Thank you, Ma'am Leila. It's been lovely hearing from you. And our second speaker is Miss Elizabeth Joy Quijano. Thank you very much for joining this panel and for the very informative and progressive talk. Thank you, ma'am, and good luck sa book launch. Punta kayo sa book launch ni ma'am. Okay, and our third speaker is Jennie Arado. Thank you very much, Miss Jennie, and congratulations for the publication of your children's story. I think the first of many, sana. Okay, and for everyone here, maraming salamat for engaging our panel. And for our online viewers, I hope it was very entertaining, educational, and enlightening. Right now, we're going to have a 5 to